Say please.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Are you ready for Tuesday? Beautiful. Stepped out on the back porch this morning as I was letting the dog do his beautiful, just pink sky, one high wispy cloud. It's supposed to rain today, and it probably will in like 15 minutes. But right now, beautiful down here on top of the world in Homer. That's the one thing I noticed about Homer. We used to joke about if you don't like the weather in Alaska, just wait 15 minutes. Down here, it's like 5 minutes. I mean, it'd be sunshiny. The other day it was sunshiny, beautiful. And then like 10 minutes later, it was hailing for like 5 minutes. It hailed and then it got sunny again. I mean, I don't know. It's schizophrenic. It's awesome. I love it. All unpredictable. Anyway, Tuesdays, it is Truth Tuesdays, where we get down into the truth, the hard, cold, bitter, painful truth. But somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. Who else better to do that than Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets? We'll let him do we'll let him be the bad guy today and tell us all about it. Brad Keithley joins us this morning to talk about wood ticks, lunatics, and politics. The weekly top three. Good morning, Bradley. How are you, my friend?
Michael, I'm doing great today. Have you ever thought about doing a show from the back porch, with the camera set up? And the
back porch is only like 5 by 5 square. It would be a little hard to do that, but the front porch maybe, but the back porch, yeah, it would be hard. But yeah, I actually did one time when I came down here and broadcast the show. I was at staying at one of their little bungalows, and I literally broadcast the show from the front porch there because it was just a beautiful day and sunshine, and Terry was asleep in the room behind me, so I didn't want to wake her, so I did it out on the front porch, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Anyway, Brad, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and we're gonna get into this here. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, and it's just, I would say, Brad, may we live in interesting times. I'm that guy, but there's some interesting stuff going on here. The stuff from the governor, the latest. It's like some people just discovered that we're in a crisis and everything else. I guess we'll start off with the fiscal game of chicken. And you said the news miner blinked. Tell me what you mean by that. What's going on?
Well, increasingly over the last couple of years, I've been viewing our fiscal dilemma as a game of chicken, with those who are taking the position that we have to have a full PFD and cut spending on one side, and those who take the position that no, we need to keep spending and we need to take it through PFD cuts on the other side, and just sort of both of them heading toward this crash that we'll talk about in the second segment. Both of them sort of heading toward this crash and seeing who blinks. And for those who want to increase spending, they sort of view it from the top, and they don't really care, I don't think, where the money comes from for the spending. They just want the money to come from the spending, and they're looking at it as wherever it's easiest to get it from, they'll take it. So you've got these two forces: those who want to cut the PFD to fund spending, and those who want to cut spending to fund the PFD, just sort of heading toward each other in a game of chicken. And the question is, in any game of chicken, who blinks, who pulls off, who diverts, who gets out of the way. And it's been interesting to watch the various players in the game over the course of the last several years, and watch who's blinking and who's pulling away and who's saying, no, I can't. I will give up on my side and let the other side have it. The news miner is the latest to blink, probably a minor player in the scheme of things, but they're the latest to blink. And they have had an editorial that says, welcome to that's headed, welcome to the PFD wars, a full dividend or a functioning state. And they define the battle as that, as either you're going to have a full PFD. If you're going to have a full PFD, you're going to have to cut spending, and you're not going to have a functioning state. And so from their standpoint, the perspective seems to be we need to cut the PFD and pay for government through PFD cuts. And this whole editorial is really a rationalization of why they're blinking and why they're saying, no, we need to cut the PFD in order to fund government. They sort of accept, like you want in a game of chicken, I suppose. They sort of accept the premise that there's not a third way. What there is, when you normally are able to resolve a game of chicken successfully, you find a third way. You find it's not all this way, not all, cutting the spending, or it's not all cutting the PFD. There's a third way. And the third way in this case would be coming up with an alternative source of revenues to cutting the PFD. And normally in a game of chicken, you have people who are trying to find that third way. But the news miner goes all in basically, and sort of rationalizes away the third way, that we're not going to be able to get to the third way. We're not going to be able to have a resolution of this short of somebody crashing. And so in their opinion, the force that ought to win is the force that proposes more spending at the expense of the PFD. And it's always interesting to watch these rationalizations spin out as people try to justify their position on this particular conflict. They begin with a brief history of the brief history quote or colon, the PFD's original purpose. and everybody has their take that fits their particular argument, their take on what the PFD's original purpose. But the news miner now, the original purpose that the news miner comes up with was intended sort of as a temporary thing when we had a surplus. But now the surplus has gone away. It's no longer viable, and it's consistent with the history to take it away. And then they have a subheading, the 2025 reality check, which is we are coming to the crash point. The next subheader is the full PFD fallacy. That is that we can't have a full PFD because, of course, we have to deflect. We have to drive the PFD off the road because we have to keep spending. And then the final subheader is what comes next. The question isn't whether the PFD should exist. It's whether we as Alaskans are ready to make hard choices about what matters most. Do we want a smaller dividend and strong public services, or a larger dividend in a threadbare state? It's time to stop pretending we can have it all.
I just can't with these guys. I can't with these guys. I mean, have they just not read? All you have to do is go back and read the statements in the minutes of the formation of the PFD. All you have to do is go back and read Hammond's works on diapering the devil. He talks exactly why he did what he did, why he pushed that. I mean, they discuss it on the floor. This is not some kind of amorphous, oh, let's guess why they did this. It was not a short-term deal. That was not the, I mean, I can't even with these people.
But it would get in the way. It would get in the way of their rationalization if they actually went back and tried to do an actual history on why the PFD got created. It would just get in the way of their rationalization. So they don't go through all that. They just say, oh well, it's intended as temporary. You know, it was put in the statute. It wasn't put in the Constitution. Which I've heard that argument before. You know, back then we thought statutes meant something. I guess we should have been omniscient and known that statutes didn't mean anything. But it's a rationalization. But the thing that really strikes me about this op-ed and others, when people, you know, in the game of chicken decide which way they're going to divert off the road, is that you don't look for a third way. It's either got to be one way or the other. It can't be the middle ground. It's got to be one way or the other. And so from the news miner standpoint, it's got to be that we cut the PFD in order to keep spending, in order to avoid having a quote threadbare state, and keep pushing forward on spending, and thus we need to use PFD cuts to fund that spending. And I find it, you know, this game of chicken is it's who blinks first. And the top 20%, non-resident industries, the tourism and fishing and the oil industry, are all counting on, you know, those supporting the PFD to blink and to pull off to the side of the road so they can keep right on going through, don't have to contribute toward the cost of government. They can keep right on going through. And I think that, and those who want to increase spending, as we saw in yesterday's vote on the defined pension, they don't want to. They're not going to blink. They don't think they should blink. They just keep on going. And so you have people who ought to know better, who ought to be concerned about 80% of Alaska families, who ought to be concerned about middle and lower income Alaska families. They're blinking and they're pulling off to the side of the road and letting the forces of spending and the forces of protecting the top 20% while they're spending win the game. And it's disturbing. I mean, the news miner, the editorial boards of the papers ought to be thoughtful enough to say, look, there's a third way. We don't need to be crashing these cars into each other. We don't need to be, you know, saying it's all one way or the other way. We don't need to be rewriting history. We need to look for a way that resolves this situation in a way that avoids the crash. But the news miner has gone all in, it seems, on avoiding the crash by giving up on middle and lower income Alaska families and diverting the car away from protecting the PFD and letting the forces that want to spend and protect the top 20% non-resident and oil industry while they're doing it. Just right. Keep on going.
Just advocating again for more and more government spending. I mean, again, it's shocking to me how many people, organizations, editorial boards, politicians, all of a sudden just discovered that we're in a fiscal crisis. It's like, I mean, literally, even the governor, I know you're going to get into this in a little bit, but even the governor, have you not been reading your 10-year forecast for the last 5 years? I mean, all of a sudden it's a crisis, you know, in the news, now it's a crisis. I mean, come on, this has been going on for years. And the one thing, what is the one common thread between all this is that we just continue to spend more than we have. I mean, I don't know how to be more plain about it. That is the one commonality between the problem for the last 30 years in this state is that we have always spent more than we have, and that's just the one thing they don't even address it. Not hardly any of the stories even address it, that this could potentially be part of as a potential, it might be part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's just we don't have enough money.
Well, the news miner certainly doesn't address that aspect of it. They don't address the aspect that we've overspent, or we're overspending on things, or that we have to get our spending house in order as part of this. To them, it's just it's a binary decision. It's either continue spending, cut the PFD, or continue the PFD, cut spending, and we can't cut spending because it will send the state into some sort of shock. So it's a very black and white. What the Newsminer editorial paints is a very black and white world, and it's not a black and white world. There, as the Fiscal Policy Working Group in 2021 concluded, it's a very gray world, and to resolve this situation, we need to deal in the gray. We need a little bit of everything to deal with the situation. But the Newsminer doesn't see it that way, and as I read it. It sort of reinforced my perception that this is all about a game of chicken and who's going to blink.
Yeah.
And the Newsminer editorial board blinked.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, again, not unexpected from the Newsminer editorial board and many of the other editorial boards in the state, quite honestly. All right, we're going to be back with more Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based. Free Thinking Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the commercial break right now. Brad Keithley is our guest. Your neighbor is like on a stopwatch, that guy. I mean, he mows his lawn every Tuesday at this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, I was like, oh, you first came on, I was like, wow, he's like using a blower right next to the house. I'm just like, every Tuesday, that guy, just like clockwork. Boom, boom, boom. But anyway, yeah, no, Brad, this is it. I mean, I'd like to say it's shocking, but it's really not. But it's just so, I guess, demoralizing at times to see these people going on and on and on about how, well, we have a revenue. We just need more revenue. And all I could say is, have you seen what they've done with all the revenue we've given them thus far? I mean, starting in 1969 and moving forward, from the time I've been alive, my entire lifetime, they got that first check and they, like it was a house of fire, and they've never stopped. They have never, ever stopped. And nobody has been like, maybe we should just, spend what we have and abide by what the statutes say and do those kind of, but it is demoralizing in some ways to think this is the same problem. And who knows, maybe in 25 years we'll look back and still have the same problem after we burn through the PFD and most of the permanent fund and everything else, and then we'll be taxing everybody and we'll still have the same problem. I mean, I don't know if these people are going to I don't know if these guys are going to ever figure it out.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's a stare down contest or a game of chicken or however you want to put it. And they're just waiting for the other guy to blink. I mean, yesterday's vote on the defined benefit, how we're going to spend this and we need to spend it. We have to spend it and we're going to spend it. But it's going to come at the expense of somebody. It's going to come at the expense of middle and lower income Alaska families in terms of PFD cuts, but we have to do it. And there's no compromise about this. It's either one side wins or the other side wins. And the Newsminer just reinforces that and says, yep, it's one side wins or the other side wins. And we're going to give up and let the other side win. We're going to let the other side, that's the forces of spending and the forces of avoiding paying for it through on the top 20% non-resident oil companies. We're going to let them win. And it's just, every time I see one of these, my mind goes back to the Fiscal Policy Working Group, who worked through these issues and deserves a lot of credit for finding a middle way through these issues and finding a way to resolve these issues in a way that doesn't that spreads the burden amongst everybody, including spending cuts and a spending cap, that works through these issues in a way that avoids the crash and avoids, a game of chicken where one guy has to go off the road, or one guy ends up going off the road. And when I see the news miner, just taking sides now, basically, and saying, "Yep, we give up. We're going to drive our car off or we're going to drive the PFD car off the road." Those who want to spend, those who want to protect the top 20%, et cetera, we're going to let them win the game. What help is that? I mean, you're destroying one part of the state. You're destroying the underpinnings for middle and lower income Alaska families in order to do something else. And it's just and there's just no sense that we have to find a middle ground, that reinforcing that we have to find a middle ground.
Well, and we're destroying the private economy as well, because it's all basically goes back to the government. Now, Chris and I normally agree on most of the things he says, but I disagree with this. He says, why do we still talk about the fiscal policy working group like it was a real effort? Fake news, pure theater to create the appearance of doing the people's work. I disagree. I talked in depth with many of the people who were part of that, and it was a knockdown, drag out struggle because it was such a dichotomous group of, left and right and chamber or both chambers and everything. I mean, they worked really hard to try and find something that would work, and it was a compromise. So I disagree with that. I think it was a good plan. The problem is nobody wanted to implement it in the end, and nobody was happy with any of the pieces outside of the working group. And then the working group itself really didn't push much on it after the meeting itself. I don't think it was fake news. I think it was just too painful. It was the truth, and it was too painful for people to pick up on. They just didn't want to do anything with it. That's my take. I guess we got to go. Here we go.
Yep. Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top three continues this morning. As we go on, we were talking about the big game of chicken, and now we move over to how's the governor's timing doing? If you're going to rank him, how's the governor's time? I mean, I had to laugh because this last Friday, governor sends out this urgent letter. I'm freezing everything. I'm doing all this stuff because, wow, we've got a crisis. And again, all I could think of was, have you not been reading your 10-year forecast for the last 5 years? I mean, this is some big shock. It was the same thing that many of the legislatures, they all of a sudden they were pale-faced, like, oh my God, we're out of money. And then the governor now putting out the second piece where he sends the letter to Edgman and Company and says, we need to come up with a group or a committee that could figure. We did in 2021. We had a perfect. It's like all of a sudden, how's your timing, Mike? I mean, it seems ridiculous to me.
It is. I mean, you just look at this session. I mean, the governor's, as you pointed out, the governor's own 10-year plan showed huge holes, showed huge amounts of red, draining through the remainder of the CBR and having nothing to fit in those blanks. A huge amount of red going out. That was, if there's ever been an indication of the crisis, it was an indication that the governor's giving up. He's got no revenue plan. He's got no spending plan. He just assumes spending continues. He assumes that there's no revenue, offsetting revenue to develop it. He just runs through the CBR and drains it. And then there's red throughout the remainder of the 10-year plan. If there was ever an indication of a crisis, that was it in his own 10-year plan. And yet he did not declare a crisis then. He didn't declare the need to develop a response to it, and he just let it go. And then he says things like, "Well, I'm going to let the legislature figure this out. I'm not going to propose revenues. If the legislature wants to develop revenues, that's great. Let them figure it out, and I'll consider it." Well, then the legislature does that in a way. It figures out some portion of revenues And now the governor says, "Oh, well, not those." I mean, I'm going to let you figure out. I'm going to let you figure it out. But then when you figure it out, I'm going to say not those, and tell you I'm going to veto those. So it's just it is odd timing. I think the best chance we had, Chris notwithstanding, I think the best chance we had for dealing with this was when the Fiscal Policy Working Group came out. And I think the governor at that point should have backed it up and said, okay, it's a difficult situation. The legislature has named this commission to look at it. They developed a solution. It's not perfect for anybody, but it's a good middle of the road compromise. I'm going to back it up and I'm going to have legislation that follows through on it. But he didn't do that. He just sort of, said, just let it sort of drift off in the night. When Ben Carpenter proposed individual bills that would implement pieces of the Fiscal Policy Working Group in the Ways and Means Committee last legislature, it would have been great. It would have been useful. It would have been fulfilling his role. If the governor said, "Yep, I'm not, this isn't perfect, but it's a good compromise of all the situations. I'm going to back Ben's legislation, the legislation that's in Ways and Means Committee, and I'm going to put my weight behind trying to pass it." But he didn't do that. He just let it sort of sit out there and let it get picked off a piece at a time, because it was individual packages as opposed to a comprehensive package. He let it get picked off a piece at a time. So his timing has been horrible throughout all this. And now we get to the point where oil prices are dropping again, and we're facing a situation where we don't have much in the CBR, and he's sort of everybody's having to confront the fact that we don't have much left in the CBR, and we are confronting this fiscal situation. But late in the session, after everybody's worked through these situations, all of a sudden, we need a fiscal commissioner. We need to work together to try to find a solution to it. Well, we were there once before.
Right.
We were there in 2021. So maybe we get there again. Maybe the governor participates this time. Maybe the governor backs it up this time, and maybe next session, he supports, or in a special session, if it comes to that, he supports the principles that people come up with. But every time you sort of turn around, I mean, I don't know if Ben would say this, but at least from the outside looking in, every time you stand up, every time a legislator has stood up and said, "Look, we need to come to a comprehensive solution. Everybody needs to give a little bit. We need to have a spending cap. We need to cut spending. We need to have some alternative revenues. We need to modify restructure the PFD a little bit down to POMV 50/50. Everybody needs to give a little bit." Every time a legislator sort of goes out there and does that, something that you would think the governor would be supportive of because of what the governor said at various times, something you think the governor would be supportive of, you sort of turn around. I mean, from Ben's standpoint, again, looking at it from the outside, from Ben's standpoint, you sort of turn around, the governor's not there.
Right.
He's off in some other dimension. And so you're sitting there by yourself taking slings and arrows that the governor ought to be backing you up on.
Right.
But and you just sort of disappear. So, maybe he's serious this time. Maybe we'll figure it out this time. Maybe he'll stick around long enough in the state to work it out. And maybe he'll stick around long enough in the state to back it up. But looking at history, he sure as hell hasn't done that to this point.
Well, and I guess in Dunleavy's defense, he attempted to do this with his first budget when Donna Ardwin was there. And of course, he got the hell kicked out of him, right? And then I had to laugh because last week in the press conference, Bert Stedman said, well, we really hope the governor comes back with a budget next year where he's cut, he's made the suggested cuts to the thing. And I'm like, he did that. And you guys rained hell on him because he proposed to cut 8% of I don't think it was 8%, but he proposed to make these cuts. And you guys said it was the apocalypse. I mean, this is, come on. I mean, now it's the governors. It's this shell game of blame back and forth. Like I said, everybody, and Mia Costello said something the other day about, well, nobody liked parts of it. Well, you're right. That's the legitimate scheme of any compromise, is the fact that everybody is unhappy with some part of it. right? Of course, nobody's going to be happy. Nobody's going to want to be the bad guy to say, no, I'm sorry, your program's gone, or there's no money for that, or I'm sorry, we can't do this. That's the thing. Everybody is in avoidance mode, trying to avoid the pain of being the person that does it. The governor tried it, got kicked, and now he's like a whipped dog. He spent the last, 7 years as a whipped dog on this deal. And it's just, come on, guys, get with the program. If we don't do something, it's going to be catastrophic. That's the thing.
It is. And people don't like parts of it. And so we go back to the first segment. I mean, it's like this game of chicken, right? Who's going to blink? And the people that want to continue spending, the people that don't want to pay for it themselves, those in the top 20% non-resident oil industry, those that want to continue spending but not pay it for themselves, just keep barreling down the road, thinking that the other side's going to blink. And then you get stuff like the Fairbanks News Miner editorial that blinks. And so that sort of reinforces them. Yes, we'll just keep pressing down the road. Compromise, yeah, we'll talk about it. But then, we'll just keep pressing down the road. It takes good faith. It takes participation from both sides. But it also takes the guys on your side backing you up when you do it. And when Ben and others on the Fiscal Policy Working Group made those compromises, and then Ben proposed the pieces on the House side in the Ways and Means Committee, it takes your guys backing you up to make sure that to push it through. And I think what Ben found, again, looking from the outside, I'm not going to speak for Ben, but again, looking from the outside, I think what he found was he put it out there. He took the stuff in the Fiscal Policy Working Group and put it out there and put it in bills with his name on it, including the sales tax, the ultra broad-based sales tax, put it out there. And then when he looked around, nobody was there. All these guys had said, we need a compromise. We need to come to some solution. Ben put it out. Ben took what the Fiscal Policy Working Group did, put it out there, and then everybody else was off doing something else, including the governor. So maybe the governor sticks around this time. Maybe the governor actually goes through with it this time. Maybe the governor actually finally puts the sales tax that he talked about in 2023, I think it was, puts the sales tax that he talked about on the table, and so we have alternative revenues to deal with instead of PFD cuts, and then we have the spending cap, and then we have the other components, and maybe the governor backs it up this time. But this sort of, I mean, you said you were sick of the circus. This sort of, it's important, then it's not. It's important, then it's not. It's important. Ben, get out there, front for it, put it all together, and then Dunleavy just going off someplace else. That's sort of in and out. Just, nobody trusts it anymore. Nobody trusts the system anymore. Right. And it's emboldening, again, going back to the game of chicken, it's emboldening them who think that they can continue spending and not bear a portion of the cost, the top 20% non-resident and oil industry, not bear a portion of the cost. It's emboldening them to think that they're winning the game of chicken, and they just keep shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving with those on the other side not pushing back very hard.
Well, and I guess that was, again, one of the more frustrating things is to watch people like Ben do the hard work, try and get what they did to the floor, and then to watch the rest of the Fiscal Policy Working Group that, most of the members were still impaneled, were still elected, were still there, and to watch them kind of go, oh, yeah, that's nice. You just stand there all by yourself. And again, going back to the governor's original plan when that he put out with Donna, and you had legislators like, yes. Oh, except for that, don't cut my, the Delana Johnson's don't cut my ag, or don't cut this, or she was the first one to pop in mind. But there were plenty of other Republicans who are like, oh, well, no, you can cut, but just don't cut my backyard. Don't go cut. Everybody's going to feel the pain. I mean, everybody's got to feel the pain if we're going to fix it. It's the same problem we have at the national level. Everybody's got to feel the pain. And nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. That they want to be the ones that take all the accolades for giving all the stuff. They don't want to be the bad guys that say, well, now you're cutting. Well, sorry. They're not trying to explain reality to these people. They just want to be the heroes that give all the projects and the monies and the programs, but not the ones that say, hey, we've got to be fiscally responsible.
And we're not going to get to a solution, Michael. We're not going to get to a solution until the governor backs it up forcefully and says, look, if we don't do this, if we don't, find some common ground, if we don't enact the fiscal policy working group, or if we don't enact whatever new compromise people come up, if we don't do this, then like Trump or like Elon Musk, I'm going to start cutting stuff. I'm going to start withholding funds. I'm going to start until the governor shows that he's willing to play chicken too, and he's willing to barrel down the road just like the other guys are. Until he shows he's willing to do that, I'm not sure we're going to get to a resolution. He tried that in 2019. He wasn't successful, but things have gotten worse since then. And so the question is he willing to try it again? Is he willing to stand up again?
Well, and he's lame duck. So I don't understand why you wouldn't at that point grab the bull by the horns and say, I'm going to be the one that saves the state, and frame it that way. I'm going to save the state. And maybe he's got higher aspirations. It would really show Alaskans that he's got the chutzpah to do the job, to take the reins of the state finances and to try and fix it. He could have spent the last 3.5 years trying to fix it. And instead, he's just kind of absent. I mean, just really absent. And then again, coming in at the last minute and signing, we got to freeze it makes no sense at all. All right, we got to run. We're going to be back in a moment. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll return with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Brad Keithley, the weekly top 3, when we get back. Back with more after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
And I agree with Terry. I mean, if Dunleavey ran for another office, I absolutely would not vote for him. No, he'd be the last guy that I would vote for, just based on his track record here. I mean, that's the thing. Yes, I understand you took a licking over the 2019 budget. I understand that. I understand that was painful and you felt like you were, again, kind of a whipped puppy. I understand. But now you've been elected. You've got 4 years. You're not coming back. Why not be the hero? Why put these pie in the sky things with carbon credits and all, and then unbalanced budgets where you draw big money from the CBR with no fiscal plan, and then act like shocked, I tell you, that there's a crisis, that like you haven't been reading your own reports that have been coming out for years. I don't understand it at all. I just do not understand the mindset at all.
Yeah, it's a minimalist. It's do nothing. I mean, it's not do no harm. It's just do nothing. The rumor is that he's setting out to run against Lisa in whatever cycle, that 2 years after his term's over, 2028, I guess. And he's setting out to run against Lisa, and he wants to, be the Trump supported conservative candidate running against Lisa. He wants to act like, he didn't endorse taxes. Then
act like Trump. Go in there and cut. Go in there with a chainsaw and get the Javier Milei thing. I mean, just go in there and do it. I mean, that's the thing. You've already got the president's endorsement. You've already got his ear. Why not go in there and buy into that full on and say, we're doing it. We're creating a Doge for Alaska. We're having the OMB go through stuff. We're going to crank down. Why not do that?
Because, I mean, I would guess because his advisors would remind him, or his own mind reminds him of 2019 when he did that and he almost got himself impeached. And I would guess that he's saying, I just want to steer this course that doesn't get me in trouble with anybody. And I want to get through my 8 years and set myself up to be Trump-like and set myself up to run against Lisa. That's what everybody wants me to do. That's what Trump wants me to do. That's why I'm getting all this high profile from Trump. It's why why I didn't get appointed to an office or a cabinet position. It's because everybody's trying to set me up to run against Lisa. And I don't want to do anything that pisses anybody off. So I don't want to do all these cuts on the other side. And if that's the attitude he's got, we don't get this resolved.
Yeah.
I mean, the attitude is give me a headline every once in a while that I'm talking about it. I at least recognize it's out there by things like this, like the latest memo I issued. And I'll be able to say later, yes, I recognize and I tried and, I did these things. But if the attitude is, I don't want to go back to what I tried to do in 2019, I don't want to play the game of chicken by running down the road and saying, we're going to do it this way. Then I'm not sure we ever get this resolved.
Let's change gears for a quick second. We got about 2.5 minutes. I see that Hillcorp has just bought up another player in the Cook Inlet, which, they already have the majority. They almost own all of it, right? I mean, they own the lion's share of everything. And is that dangerous in your mind? I mean, to have one player that you have to negotiate with and they hold all the cards at this point. Does it get more tough in this regard? I was just thinking about it as I read the article this morning. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, monopolies are tough. We saw it last session when Giesel and others tried to close the Hillcorp loophole, and Hillcorp essentially threatened the Cook Inlet with no development if the legislature went through it, and the legislature backed down because Hillcorp's in a monopoly position. Monopolies are bad. That's why we have laws against them. The current purchase of this minor interest down in the lower Kenai isn't a problem. It's a very small interest. The big issue currently is Hillcorp's proposed acquisition of the Kenai LNG plant, Marathon's Kenai LNG plant. And if they have control not only of Cook Inlet production, but also Cook Inlet imports, LNG imports, as they would if they're successful in that purchase of the unqualified purchase of the Kenai LNG plant, that's going to be a real problem. I mean, what we're setting up for is we are going to have some competition coming in the form of LNG, and that's not perfect competition, but at least it's some competition to keep Hillcorp from having a totally monopoly position. But Hillcorp's the one who's proposed to buy the Kenai LNG plant. There are ways to deal with that. I wrote a column about it a few weeks ago, the ways to deal with that. But that's the problem, not this little minor acquisition they're doing down in the lower Kenai. The problem is the proposed acquisition of the Kenai LNG plant.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch I guess we should get the popcorn out. Again, it's much more fun to watch when it's a movie and not when you're living it. That's the problem right now. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We're about to jump into number 3, which is a check on the private economy. How's that a private economy working out for you? We're going to get into that here in just a second. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, continuing now with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're all over the place this morning, but I got to tell you, it's. I'm shaking my head, just wondering what's going to happen next. So, Brad, a quick check, a gut check here on the Alaska economy and on the private economy specifically. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about that U.S. News and World Report finding, which we talked about yesterday quite a bit, where Alaska is, again, in the back of the pack, 49th out of 50 on many different things. But the fiscal situation and the economy is a big chunk of that. Give me your check on the business climate here and the economy in Alaska.
So this is sort of the culmination of the first 2 segments, right? The first segment First segment is we're playing this game of chicken. Second segment is Dunleavy's not doing anything about it, or when he does, he doesn't back it up. He just sort of throws it out there and then walks away. And the third segment to this segment is the consequence of that. And the consequence of that is that we're beginning to see this deterioration in business confidence and in the state's economic position. The headline that sort of brought me to this is in the ADN from earlier this week. The headline is Survey of Alaska's Small Businesses Shows Dramatic, in quotes, dramatic confidence drop as political uncertainty grew. Now, most of the article is about the tariffs and the potential impact of Trump's tariffs on Alaska in terms of creating higher cost from imports and reducing the demand for Alaska products like fish and other things, the mining, reducing the demand for that as a result of the tariffs and the concern that is creating in the Alaska business community about this crunch between higher costs and lower sales. That's most of what the article talks about. But there is something else going on in addition to that. I think we would be seeing this sort of problem even if we hadn't had the tariffs, this sort of growing problem, even if we hadn't had the tariffs. And part of that is picked up by the U.S. News and World Report survey. Alaska ranks I just picked the Peninsula Clarion headline. Alaska ranks 49th ahead of only Louisiana in U.S. News and World Report's annual best states survey. And the reason that I use the Peninsula is because they had the chart at the top of the article, how Alaska ranks among states in U.S. News and World Report's annual survey. And the part I went to quickly was fiscal stability. Alaska ranked in 2018. It's got the various categories that U.S. News and World Report ranks, and it's got Alaska's rank in it in those categories as it goes along. Fiscal stability. Here's the ranks. In 2018, Alaska ranked 47th. In 2019, Alaska ranked 48th. In 2021, Alaska ranked first. And the reason Alaska ranked first was the survey finally sort of caught up with the fact that we'd started diverting the PFD to fund government, and that we were taking care of government spending. We were funding government spending in some way through PFD cuts. Us in Alaska knew we were funding it through PFD cuts, but we were funding government spending. So it looked like Alaska was very fiscally responsible. No taxes, no obvious taxes, nothing that we labeled a tax. PFD cuts are taxes, but nothing that we labeled a tax. And we were continuing to meet budget without talking about significant cuts in spending. So in 2021, Alaska ranked first. 2023, Alaska is down to 33rd. 2024, Alaska is back up to 21st. 2025, Alaska is down at 44th. And I think what we're seeing is a recognition that Alaska's fiscal stability is deteriorating quickly. And we're seeing a recognition that has consequences to the business community, certainly in terms of uncertainty, because the business community really doesn't know where we're going to go as a state. None of us know where we're going to go with this as a state with respect to this uncertainty. Are we going to continue to take money out of the private economy by pulling money out of middle and lower income Alaska families through PFD cuts? Are we going to have taxes? Are we going to have higher taxes on the oil industry? Are we going to finally tax non-residents? Just the uncertainty. Are we going to cut spending down to moderate spending down to the level that we can afford it? Just the uncertainty that we have about that at the state level, I think, is feeding into the confidence concern also that we're seeing showing up in the survey that the small business group did, the small business confidence survey that they did. So I think we're seeing sort of the culmination, the first thing we talked about today was this game of chicken coming at each other. The second thing was Dunleavey not trying to stop the game of chicken, not trying to find a third way, not stepping in and saying this is important to Alaska, we need to resolve it, just sort of flitting in and out, sort of depending upon how it affects his 2020. Here we go again. how it affects his 2028 election prospects against Lisa, sort of flitting in and out about that. And the third thing then is we're seeing it show up in the business community in terms of lack of confidence and in terms of a drop in Alaska's rating among the states, because we don't have this resolved. We don't have our fiscal situation resolved.
Right. Well, and this was a question for Mark Sabatini of the Juneau Empire and the Peninsula Clarion at the press conference last week to the Senate majority leadership. What do you think of Alaska being 49th, just ahead of Louisiana? And they had it was like the birds and, like the deer in a headlight kind of moment where they were like, oh, well, Alaska's great. And they don't care about the private economy. That's the thing. They don't care what happens to the private economy. They don't care if we show up as 49th or 50th or 51st out of 50. They don't care, because as long as they've got their money and their programs, they're okay with it. That's what it comes down to.
Well, and to some degree, they think they are the private economy. I mean, we've heard legislators say that, Alaska, it's important to have this spending or that spending because that's what drives the economy. That's what keeps the economy going. A lack of recognition that there is a private economy that needs to be addressed. And so they think they are the economy, and they just need to keep pulling in more and more funds and spending more and more to address it. It's sort of the same thing, Michael, as outmigration. Remember, outmigration was a big issue a couple of years ago. It was at the start of the session. Everybody was talking about outmigration and how they had great solutions to it. But the solutions were, as we discovered when we did the analysis, it's the middle and lower income Alaska families that are out migrating. And the solutions were to take steps to help bolster the economic position of middle and lower income Alaska families. And I think as that dawned on the legislators, they said, well, there's nothing we can do about that. and so you've heard people barely talk about out-migration this session, because that's a private economy thing. They think they don't have any effect on the private economy. So why talk about it? And it's sort of like the same thing with respect to business confidence.
Right.
They think the only solution to business confidence is for them to spend more. It's not.
Right. Yeah.
It's for them to take less out of the private economy and let the private economy have more resources for itself.
I would dare to guess that probably 70 to 80% of the legislature believes that the economy can only be driven by government spending. That's it, that there's just they have to be there. They have to be part of it. Otherwise, the economy just won't. And again, to them, that is, like you said, I think in their minds, that is the economy. There is no public-private. It is the economy, and it's all government. And that's a shame. Down to the last minute here, Brad, final thoughts.
Well, I think it's all part of the same thing. I think the fact that we're playing chicken with our fiscal policy, I think the fact that governor won't step in and back up people who are trying to get to a compromise on fiscal policy, and I think the lack of business confidence that's showing up is all part of the same thing. This we've gone on long enough with an uncertain fiscal policy that is now affecting the private sector of the economy in ways that are bad, and we're seeing it show up in these various reports.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3 Truth Tuesdays. The truth hurts, baby, sometimes. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it.
Michael, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we're out of time. Hour 2 dead ahead. Chris' story coming up. A little bit of my thoughts. All right, Brad. Final bite at the apple here. I guess, something you said resonated here a little bit ago. I don't know if it was during the break or what, but when you basically said, I don't know if we solve this. I don't know do we have to hit we were talking the other day. Do we just embrace it? Do we just embrace every bit of spending and just say, go ahead, spend it all, put it all in there, do it all, and just accelerate the crash until it actually happens? or I don't know. I don't know what the solution is there, but we can't continue the way we are. And now, of course, Kathy Giesel at the last meeting was pushing on the combining of the ERA and the corpus. I mean, that's the next big target, right? Is
Right.
to get that big pot of money. So, I mean, do we see some kind of fiscal crash, or will they try and sell that, and Alaskans will be so desperate, and there'll be so many people out there who are, like the news, the Daily News, had on there, who are like, oh, tax me harder, daddy. I mean, they just, is that what they want? They'll be like, oh, sure, combine them, because we just don't want to. Just give us more government. Give us more. I mean, is that? I don't understand.
Well, I think the only thing that's going to resolve this game of chicken to the benefit of the Alaska economy, to the benefit of middle income Alaska families, to the benefit of the private sector Alaska economy, I think the only thing that's going to resolve it is to find some sort of compromise. Because the game of chicken right now, if you look at the Fairbanks Newsminer op-ed as an indicator, the game of chicken is being won by those who are saying, spend more, spend more, spend more, take it out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families. Just keep on going down this road, and Giesel, take it out of the corpus. Just keep on going down this road, and that's who's winning this game. So if the response to that is stop spending, full PFD, cut spending. If that's the only response to it, we're seeing, I think, that loses the game of chicken. Fairbanks Newsminer gave up, and I think we're seeing that the game of chicken is going to be won by those who just keep forcing more spending. I think the only way to resolve it is to find some compromise. And to go back to the thing that Chris discounts, I mean, the 2021 Fiscal Policy Working Group found principles of compromise. And I think that we've got to find a way to enforce that, because I don't think the game of chicken is just going to end up in a big crash for the private economy, for private confidence in the economy. I think it's just going to end up in a big crash. And I don't think it's a winnable position. So what I think we ought to be doing is concentrating on finding a compromise, and the governor ought to be stepping in and forcing hands at efforts at that compromise. If we don't do it, I'm increasingly, I mean, it's not just the news miners, just other things I pick up. I'm increasingly pessimistic that we're going to resolve this situation in a way that's to the benefit of middle income Alaska families and to the private sector of the Alaska economy.
Hey, Donna Ardwin is in the chat room. Hello, Donna. Ben Carpenter was right about everything. Yeah. I mean, he was. I mean, we don't disagree. In fact, Ben Carpenter is going to be on the show tomorrow to talk with us, give us a recap of his take on everything that's happening this year. He's going to be with us tomorrow morning. It's in the 6:00 hour. But you're right. He was right about everything. The Fiscal Policy Working Group was right about everything. That was a pretty contentious, cantankerous kind of group of people who didn't agree, but in the end, they all unanimously. When you get Jesse Keel and a bunch of folks on our big government on the left agreeing with Ben Carpenter and Mike Shower and Kevin McCabe and those on the right, when they come together and say, okay, it's not great, but this is what we've got. This is the best that we can come up with. This is the best compromise. And then everybody just ignores it. What do you expect? Is it going to get any better? I can't see how this is going to survive.
Well, Ben didn't ignore it. I mean, Ben put those bills in. We had the Ways and Means Committee. What again? What happened though when Ben looked around, there was nobody there. The governor wasn't there. Some of his fellow legislators weren't there. Everybody sort of went off and started playing the game of chicken again. And so the effort to find a resolution of this in the middle someplace, recognizing that both sides have some justification in their positions, the effort to find some resolution just cratered. And the game of chicken continued. And the game of chicken is increasingly being won by those who want to press for more spending and avoid the top 20% and others paying for it. So do we get to a resolution of this? I mean, sort of starting with segment 3, we need to recognize it's having an effect on the private economy. We need to recognize it's having an effect on business confidence. We need to recognize it's having an effect on things that are important to Alaska. And then sort of back up and say, okay, we recognize that. We need to get to a resolution. The governor needs to be involved in it. And we need to stop playing the game of chicken, and we need to come to some sort of third way resolution.
I hope there's enough time for people to see this, and I hope that there's not a bunch of people out there who are just like, "Oh, I'll just pay the tax." Well,
or I'm just going to continue to fight to the end to cut spending to pay for the full PFD. I mean,
spending is part of the overall plan. That's what
it is. It is, but it's part. It's not. We can't do it through cut spending.
Absolutely, I agree with that at this point, because it's obviously not worked for the last 25 years. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, out of time. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to hour 2 of this Tuesday edition of the Michael Duke Show. Just another beautiful day in the state. I want you to take a moment before we get into what I'm feeling is going to be an epic rant. Before we get into that, I want you just to take a moment and look outside. If you got a window near you, just look outside. I know they just got a half inch of snow in the valley and everything else. We just looked outside, and it's before the show, and it was beautiful pinks and just the sun. You could see the sun coming up, and the sky was lightening, and just one high wispy cloud, and just a beautiful, beautiful morning. I just want you all to take a deep breath, just to and realize how lucky we are to live in this fantastic state. No matter what you see outside your window, whether it's snow or brown slowly turning green, or a clear sky, or the ocean, or whatever you're looking at, just take a minute and appreciate what we have, because it's important, and appreciate all those people around you who make up your life. That's the important. What we talk about today, while important, is not important with an I, right? The important stuff is the woman laying in the next room to me, and the kids behind me, and my family in Fairbanks, and all the people that I deal with on a daily basis who make our lives better. So I just want you to, to take a moment before blood shoots out of my eyes and we deal with this. Okay? So just that moment. All right. You looked outside, you see it, you feel it, you take that breath. Okay. All right. It's great to be here. All right. Good to be here. Now, This thing with the state, with all of these different players and all of these different people, is probably one of the most frustrating things in my life. Only because I have been battling this out and fighting this fight for 25 years in public, right? I was motivated and activated before I started, before I hit my own radio show. But truly, these last 25 years, the work of my life has been to try and make the state better and more sustainable, and to encourage people and to make Alaska a better place. And my way of doing that was to show that we have been doing ourselves, I don't know if I should say irreparable harm, but untold harm for sure, by continuing to spend more than we take in year after year, day after day. I have railed on Republican legislators and Republican governors. I mean, I love it when people say, well, you're just one of those conservative talkers. You don't understand. You might be right, but in the words, in the terms of a true conservative, not a Republican. I'm a libertarian, so I believe the government should be out of most areas of our lives. But the areas that they are in already, we need to be focusing on and realizing that those can always be better. So for 25 years, I've railed against, I'm thinking Sean Parnell. I raked him over the coals. I was critical of Sarah Palin near the end of her tenure with some of the things that she did. Murkowski, definitely people like Tony Knowles, etc. But again, anytime we have a government that spends more than they take in and acts as if it's no big deal, and this is at the state and the national level, we're in trouble. And the fact that these politicians are just now acting like this is some big surprise, like shocked, I tell you, that we're in a crisis. And I mean, when I hear that, they're just like, oh yeah, I just can't. And they just look, we're real. We just don't know where it came from.
Welcome to the party, pal.
25 years of saying exactly what my message has never changed. You can't continue to spend more than you take in and expect that it's going to work out okay. And now we are feeling the pinch more than ever. Now, the PFD is the PFD is going to go away. I personally don't see any other solution to the problem that's been created by this legislature and past legislatures, by leaders and politicians and big thinkers. I just don't see any other solution, because it is the easiest, most easily accessible source of money out there. This dividend for this year, $1,000, which, sounds like, well, it's a chunk of money. That's not bad. But again, adjusted for inflation, is the lowest PFD includes the one, what was it, 19, the first one was $1,000, but there were a few years after that where it was like $300 or $400, right? So this is the lowest PFD adjusted for inflation that we've ever received. And that's just after last year the Senate had the gall to tell us. Gary Stevens, the president of the Senate, sat up there and when asked about what is the Senate's fiscal plan, his fiscal plan was, well, our fiscal plan is 75-25. That's our fiscal plan. Fast forward 12 months, And here we are at 8317. 8317. And they're already telling us that next year is going to be worse. And let me tell you, you should listen. Because you know how they haven't mentioned anything about all these fiscal problems that we've been talking about on the show for years, and especially the last 5 years as we've gone over the governor's 10-year forecast every year, and we talk about it. Brad's talked about it, ad nauseum. I mean, but they said nothing. So when they start saying, "Oh, next year's going to be bad," you know it's going to be worse than when they actually acknowledge. You better buckle up, right? Again, depending on the estimates and how things play out between the newly passed, the House yesterday passed the new defined benefits bill from the Senate to the House. Now, I believe the governor is going to, I would put good money on the fact that I think the governor is going to veto that. But if he didn't, the estimates are anywhere from $150 million a year to upwards of $400 million a year, because they took some, again, we talked about this yesterday, and I don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but when you build a plan that says, oh, we're going to have a 7.5% return, but your 10-year return has been 5.8% or 5.3%, you already have problems, right? So anywhere from $100 million to $400 million a year. You're going to add the education for another $200 million a year. You've got the new employee contracts, which are going to add another $100 to $150 million a year. And the governor's 10-year forecast, accounting for none of this new spending, is saying we're going to be $1 billion plus, maybe $1.5 billion short. Next year's where the rubber's going to meet the road. And quite honestly, I will be very surprised if there is a PFD next year. I will go out on a limb right now and say, if we do get a PFD, it will probably be sub $500 if we get one. The problem with that is not only the effect on the private economy by taking all of that PFD out of the economy. The problem is that the following year, there will be more spending on top of that. And so if we have any PFD at all next year, then the following year, it'll be gone. And while those 2 years may sound like they're problematic, the real problem will then be the third year when they have consumed all of the PFD. And probably by that time, all of the CBR. Then there will be no more free pots of money. Now, they may bamboozle Alaskans into voting for combining the funds. And that will have an effect of basically kicking the can down the road and putting us on a glide path to crashing instead of an abrupt, nosedive. It'll be a longer glide. Because then what they'll do is they'll slowly chip away and eat away at the corpus of the fund until there's just not enough returns to pay for the government, because the government will continue to increase. If they did nothing, if they added no new spending, the government will increase by 100, 150, maybe $200 million a year, just based on those automatic escalators that are built into the different formulas and the different thing. Just the cost of inflationary things and everything else, $200 million a year. So in 2 years, You got almost $500 million. By the time you hit the 5-year mark, you're $1 billion ahead. And that's, again, assuming no additional spending. And how likely do you think that is? Right? How likely do you think that is, that there will be no additional spending? I mean, we know we're in a crisis now, and they just added a multi-billion-dollar defined benefits bill and voted for it. And then eventually they will come in and say, you've got to invest in the future of the state.
But we don't yet live in a world where the Alaska people are ready for themselves to invest in their state government.
You need to invest in this. Free rides die hard. And then there will be a whole cadre of people who will say, yes, big daddy government. Yes, we need you. I'm willing to pay. Tax me harder, daddy. I just got to say, hard times are coming. I mean, we've seen this. We've seen this play out. I mean, we've seen this play out on the global scale, right? Weimar, Zimbabwe. We've seen what happens. Luckily, Alaska doesn't have the ability to print their own money and devalue their own currency. But we'll see some kind of crash in another way. Now, I don't think there's never been a state that's declared bankruptcy. And we won't with $80 billion sitting in the permanent fund. Some judge will say, well, you got to pay because money's right there. And it'll happen. But eventually, this train will hit the bridge and fly off into space. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I know I don't want to be on that train. So, you see, it didn't turn into a rant. It turned into a calm, quiet plea for you folks to go out and spread the word to your fellow citizens. All those people that I told you to think about earlier, the people that affect your life, you better start having conversations with them about, do you know what's going on in the state? Are you familiar? Are you so focused on what Donald Trump and the Congress are doing, or some no-neck idiot outside in the national stage is doing, that you have no effect over? Is that blocking you from paying attention to what's going on in your own backyard? You better start paying attention to what's happening here, because that's definitely going to affect you a lot more than what some pencil neck geek back in Washington, D.C. is doing in his cubicle to affect you. I mean, that will have an effect, don't get me wrong. But your day-to-day life, your grocery bill, what happens in your community, your roads, that's what you need. You best start talking to people, because it's coming. The reckoning is coming. That's what it is. It's a reckoning. All right. We got to go. Chris Story's coming up next to talk more about this. We're going to talk about this new property tax bill and kind of the weird. I'm weirded out by this article. Let's just put it that way. We're going to be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Say please.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. And Frank, says what I think a lot of you are probably going to say. I do tell others. The problem is they rely on government to pay their bills. And I think that's part of the problem. I think that's part of the problem is that you've got a whole group of people out there who have become so dependent on the government, they can't possibly think of any other way to handle it. They can't envision a life without that governmental interference or support, however you want to look at it. We've created a dependency state. Chris Story is on the phone with us right now. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Is it going to be in my near future where I'm driving down Pioneer Avenue and you're holding a sign that says the end is near?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a sandwich board front and back, and I won't be wearing anything but my underwear. Anything but my underwear. And I'll be screaming.
Like in,
yeah.
What was the, it's my favorite,
The Stand?
my favorite Christmas movie.
Oh.
No. Bruce Willis.
Die Hard?
I can't think of it. Die Hard 2, I think, with Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
And he had to wear the sandwich board sign in Harlem or wherever.
Yeah, exactly. Ringing the board, ringing the bell.
I think he was naked.
Yeah.
And I had to wear that sandwich board sign, and Samuel L. Jackson saved his life.
Yeah.
It was a good movie.
Yeah, no. I want to think the best, Chris. I want to be positive. Like I said, I want to have hope.
I thought you were telling a joke.
No, but at some point you got to look at this and go, this is not going to work out. This is not going to be pretty, right?
It's like the kid that came home from school and said to his dad, "Dad, I failed the math exam today. I'm sure I failed the math exam today." And he said, "Son, that's negative. Be positive." "Okay, Dad, I'm positive I failed the math exam today."
Exactly. I'm not trying to be dauber down, but at some point you almost have to be realistic to say, this is not going to end well, man. How do we fix it? And I don't have an answer anymore. I used to think that, the charter of changes, we could do it. We could vote harder, we could do. And yet today I'm like, I don't know as that will work. I just don't know as that will work.
Who's the one senator in the state right now that you think is a leader with which you could get behind and might make a difference statewide? Is there a senator or a House rep?
Well, I think the strongest senator in my mind is Mike Shower. As far as aligned with my views and who I think could get it done, who's got the personality and the leadership skills. But he's got to have people in that same Senate who support him. And I just don't think that, I don't think there's enough players in there of that ilk to be able to do it. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of where we're at right now. But, yeah. We're going to talk about this new, House bill. And we're going to go through it just a little bit. I'm going to hit a couple highlights before I throw it to Chris, because I want his take on it. And I just want to give kind of my angle before I turn it over to him and get his thoughts on it and how this might tie back to his fair tax concept. And that's before we get into the final segment, which is going to be the uplift, which we will need. Chris, what's the uplifting segment going to be today?
Oh, you'll love this. The weight of pain.
I am feeling it so much this morning. All right. We'll dive into that then. So, all right. Chris is in the green room holding for us right now. We're going to get back to it here in just a second. Man, I didn't rant. You should be proud of me. I did not rant. Oh, Melissa did say, I want a full thumb drive of Dukes' hotkeys when you decide you can't blow your gasket every day anymore. Some people like my hotkeys, and I will give you a thumb drive, but you've got to
say please.
All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's jump into this right now and get started with Chris Story, the man from Homer.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke show.
Okay. We are continuing now. Chris Story is our guest a little early today because sometimes we bring him on for an earlier segment. He's going to soothe our savage beast, afterwards in the next segment. Although his topic is the weight of pain. I don't know if he's been listening to the show and that's what he's feeling or what, but we're going to get into that. But I brought him on this morning to talk about this new article that came out in Must Read last night, talking about this bill, House Bill 13, which the headline reads in Must Read from Suzanne Downing: House Bill 13 could lower property taxes for some, but shift burden to others. And let me tell you what I came out of this whole article with. And I find it kind of dichotomous that Republicans and Must Read has been very vocal about their antithetical stance to any kind of tax, the Hill Corp tax, the internet tax, any kind of taxes. They kind of took issue with Ben Carpenter talking about a potential statewide sales tax as part of a larger fiscal plan. They were no fans of taxes. And yet when this bill comes out, and it's got broad support, it passed 25 to 15, not broad support. It's got pretty, they were able to peel off some of the minority, right? 4 members of the minority. House Bill 15 would give municipalities the option to provide targeted tax exemptions, meaning that if you had long-term rental units or certain mobile home parks or properties rented to low-income folks or owner-occupied primary residence, it would give municipalities the ability to choose what kind of exemptions they got. But then they go on to talk about how, well, this just shifts the property tax. This just shifts it to other people. This is just, since property taxes are a key revenue source for local governments and fund schools and public safeties and streets and emergency services, reducing taxes for some property owners will likely require raising them for others in order for the city not to go bankrupt. And it's kind of this it's a take in this whole thing of kind of this you shouldn't do that. Basically saying that we should just tax everybody. Again, never going back to the base argument of property taxes are immoral. Okay? They're taxes on unrealized gains. You will never own your property. And see, that's never even touched on in this. And maybe that's just because that's much more of a broader picture kind of idea than what Suzanne was going for here. But I just find it interesting that every other article about any other kind of tax that has been handled by Must Read over the last 2 or 3 years has been, scorching on the tax. We shouldn't no tax on oil companies, no tax. Again, even Ben Carpenter's tax as part of a larger fiscal policy, they kind of scorched him on it, right? But this one, well, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't give tax breaks. We shouldn't, which I found kind of dichotomous, I guess is the word that I'm going to use. But let's get Chris Story's take on this, since he's a lifelong realtor and from the cradle. He was kind of came out, and he's been pushing for this fair tax, which of course he and I are in agreement on, comes from the fact that property taxes are pretty immoral, and property taxes are taxes without representation. They're taxes on unrealized gains. So let's get Chris Story's take on this. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Michael. Yeah, I think I like starting where you just ended there on the 30,000 foot level and just say, okay, before we get into the merits of or the right sizing of certain tax incentives or abatements and in trying to create some sort of a shift in housing. Let's look at it from 30,000 feet. Are property taxes a violation of the Constitution? I say yes. Under the Fifth Amendment, it literally states, nor shall you be deprived of private property without just compensation. Now, there's obvious cases of takings, such as eminent domain, or when the government comes along and says, look, we're going to be widening the right of way. We're going to acquire at a predetermined fair market value per square foot a strip of land from you so as to make this public improvement, but we will compensate you justly for it. All right, those are obvious takings. This is a less obvious taking in clear violation of the Constitution, such as it's a squeezing, a constant squeezing. We're not going to take it all at once. We're going to take it. It's like saying we're going to take all your blood, but not today, just drop by drop. And so that is a clear taking, similar to the mob, right? The mob doesn't take it all at once. They come along and say, look, we're going to offer you protection. You're going to give us a percentage. We're going to get a VIG every single month or week. We're going to come by and collect an envelope. They don't take it all at once. They squeeze you over time. Now, the mob will from time to time, and I have a degree in mob mentality because I've watched all 6 seasons of The Sopranos a couple times through. They'll bust out your store once in a while. If you refuse to pay, they'll liquidate everything you've got. They will destroy you. Wait a minute. That's tax foreclosure. So really, is there any daylight between the mob and property taxes? I say no. I'd go further to say that property taxes are regressive by design. In other words, fair market value of a property does not take into consideration one's ability to pay, whereas sales tax, obviously income tax, these are purely based on one's ability to pay, either based on spending or earning. And I'm going to also say that not one person that I've ever listened to nationally or statewide or locally has made a single cogent argument as to why the guy with a view should pay more to educate the children than the guy with no view, or the person who keeps a tidy home and cares for it and puts sweat equity into their own property should pay more to educate the children than the neighborhood pig. So, or the larger home. Let's say you fell your own trees, hand-hewed a beautiful log home on your property, and you care for it and you oil it every year and you've done. Why should that person pay more to educate the children than the guy in a small cottage living just outside the city limits in Kachemak City paying zero property tax? His name is Bill Smith, by the way, and he wrote an article, an op-ed against my Fair Tax Act because he said it wasn't fair. He pays zero property tax. So I'm just saying we can have these straw man arguments back and forth. To Suzanne's argument in her piece in the Must Read Alaska, I would say this. Let's say we're all on a big ship together and we notice that there's a hole in the side of the boat and we all form a bucket brigade. Everybody is bailing the boat out. Everybody's taking a turn. And then somebody comes along and proposes, look, let's let the senior citizens use smaller buckets because their backs are weaker and they're older. And you know what? Let's take some of the poor people who didn't have advantages in life, give them smaller buckets as well. And so they don't have to carry as much of the burden out. And you know what? Minorities and other people that we feel are disadvantaged, let's give them no buckets at all because they shouldn't have to do this. Let's get the more privileged people, the larger buckets, to bail the boat out faster. And okay, under that circumstance, she's making, I think, a relatively decent argument. Why didn't everybody have an equal size bucket? Why didn't everybody have to contribute? And if you let these people sit by idly, these people will necessarily have to do more bailing. But wait a minute, Suzanne, why don't we stop the leak? Why don't we fix the leak? You can have 1,000 people hacking away at the leaves, and maybe one of us should at least start looking at the root of the problem. And that's where I take issue with her argument. Isn't that she's wrong per se, it's just the wrong argument. And maybe this bill's the wrong bill. I'm hoping that our Fair Act tax bill will go somewhere. I've given a copy of Title 29 Amendment to Sarah Vance. Look, I'm no lawyer. I drafted this. I've handed it off to Representative Sarah Vance. She's taken it to her legal team. I'm hopeful we can get some sort of a fair, ubiquitous change in our tax policy. But I'll end on my rant on this, Michael. As one-time candidate for New York City mayoral office, Jimmy McMillan said, the rent's too damn high. And in this case, the landlord is the government. And I'll remind you that the government is you, we the people.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And look, I don't, somebody just said, oh, now you're disparaging Suzanne. I'm not disparaging her. I'm disagreeing with her. I'm disagreeing with the premise of her argument. The premise,
and she would welcome that, by the way. She would welcome.
Yeah, no,
I know her well enough to know she would welcome.
Yeah, no, she. You know, again, I am fighting against the validity because what she's basically doing is validating the idea that property taxes are okay. And the bottom line is, property taxes are not okay. We could point to a dozen different stories of people who've had to move out of their homes after they retire and maybe move to another state or to another place because they can't afford the property taxes on the home that they spent 30 years paying for and hoped to retire in and wanted to stay. That's not the American dream. That's not well, I mean, it's not right. Right? It is I mean, it's scandalous, in my opinion, when you've got people being forced out of their homes that they've paid for with interest and have paid taxes on all those years. And now because they can't afford, because the value of their home has gone up, they can't afford to stay in that home anymore. It is scandalous that this is what's going on. And yet
it's unconscionable.
Yeah. And again, you've got the whole idea of, well, it's wealth redistribution because now the people up here will have to pay more than the people that. Why are we having this argument about people paying? We shouldn't be paying that. They are unconscionable. Property taxes are immoral in the way that we're doing them now. Now, taxes.
Well, I think you could take the moralistic argument, and I agree with you on a level. I think we'll be more effective if we take the constitutional argument versus the moralistic one. Because moralistically, I think it's similar to envy. There's going to be other human emotions that can go into it and say, well, wait a minute, this guy's got, $1 million home. Why shouldn't they pay more or she pay more? I truly think it's a constitutional question. Why it's never been tested, I don't know. Ben Adams, I don't know if you know him, but he's an incredible guest, and I'm hoping to have him rebooked here pretty quick on my show. He's a Canadian. He's a lawyer. He's an American by choice. He runs a ranch out of Kenai or Soldotna, and he's being taxed almost out of business. And he told me on my show, he goes, I don't understand why why we allow property taxes at all. And he makes an incredible argument for its unconstitutionality. So I think that kind of an argument is something I'd rather engage in than, do we squeeze this end or that end and create these incentives, which may or may not work. And there's a difference between affordable housing and subsidized housing. And we need to remember that as well.
Well, you know why we're having such a hard time with property taxes in this country? Because there is no other option at this point, because people can't fathom an idea. Oh, how do we fund our local governments then if we don't have property? They can't wrap their brain around that idea of there is no other option to them. And so when you propose the idea that property taxes are unconstitutional or immoral, they may agree in their hearts, but then they're like, but how do we fund it? Because we're not offering an alternative solution. I think is part of the problem as well.
Which I like the idea then of going back to the boat, bailing out the boat. Look, maybe there will always be some, there's a scuppered open and there's always going to be some water coming in. That's just the cost of doing business. We got to have roads, school, police protection, fire, all that. We agree on all of that, but must it be so high? And just clearly we're overspending at every level of government.
Chris Story, our guest, we're coming up on the break, so we're going to try and do some funner things here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, a little bit of positivity, although when you talk about the weight of pain, that doesn't sound very positive, but we'll see. I'm positive that you will enjoy it. How about that? Back with more Chris Story right after this. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. We are in the break with Chris Story. I really think that's the bigger part of the problem, Chris, is that I agree with you. I think it is unconstitutional. That's definitely not what the framers intended. But the problem is there's no alternative at this point in most people's minds. And so while they may agree in their hearts with you, At the same time, they're like, yeah, but the children will starve and be barefoot in the street with no education if we don't. Right? I mean, that's kind of I think that's the big hook in there. The big problem, the sinkhole, is that we're not offering an alternative at the same time.
And the only alternative, I agree, and the only alternative that I can think of in my very simple mind is just to say, well, if we must have property taxes, and apparently we must, if we must, let's at least make it, quote, more fair, which is to say the Fair Act tax reform would at least stop the taxation of unrealized gains. And when you think about that, how it's so rejected in every single market in our country, that nobody could even fathom the idea of taxing you on the gains in your retirement account or your from your IRA to your 401k to your stock holdings. Nobody can even fathom that. But yet private property is any different. But yet, okay, we've been conditioned over the last, I don't know, what was it, 1890 or whenever we started property taxing each other. And that is ourselves. And that is a very local conversation. So it is something we can have a great deal of influence over. We've just accepted it. And it's like, okay, if it must be here because that's the way with which we have decided to pay for these services, then it better at least be fair, or at least more fair, versus the arbitrary and often appearing capricious and in very subjective manner with which we do it now, which is to say, oh, your neighbor sold for $1.1 million. Guess what? Your property is going up as well. Or, oh, natural gas has been introduced to your particular subdivision or area. We're going to impute in a value of $30,000 higher this year over last. Thank you very much. Pay the bill. Hey, Peter Micciche, by the way, governor. Well, that's maybe forecasting. Mayor Peter Micciche is at least trying to bring down the mill rate, and it's up to each of us on the Kenai Peninsula. Any of you listening on the Kenai right now, support his mill rate reduction. You've got to contact your assembly, let them know you are in favor of it, and at least let's get behind the mayor who's attempted to do something. He has very few levers at his control, according to Title 29, which is what I'm trying to change. At least he's trying to reduce our taxation by reducing the mill rate. So that, and he says it's the largest mill rate reduction in our lifetime, my lifetime. So I say we really should support him in that effort.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree. Anything to me, that's why I would support this HB 14 or any other bill that would allow for exemptions. Anything that reduces a property tax burden, even if it's on even if it was just for seniors, even if it was just for veterans, even if it was just for, whoever, I am in favor of it. Because again, not forcing people out of their homes is the ultimate goal here. I think.
Do we have an extra minute here before we go back? Or
yep, we got 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Let me give you one more example about how a government interferes with affordable housing. We had a mobile home park here in Homer, and the city council, the then sitting council, very elitist and erudite, said, we don't like the look of a mobile home park in our community, and so we don't want it anymore. And so they created a law, an ordinance that would disallow the replacement of a single mobile home in that park if repairs or damage exceeded, I can't remember the number, $5,000, whatever it was. They would have to remove that mobile home and it would not be allowed to be replaced, period. So we lost about 22 or 25 spaces in affordable housing, entry-level housing, where people could at least own their walls, even though they be mobile. We eliminated it because we didn't like the look of it. That's direct governmental interference, creating a housing shortage, which they're all crying about now, and affordability crises, such that even Senator Sullivan 2 years ago ran all over the state of Alaska with then Secretary of Housing Budge and was decrying, we have an affordability crisis, and yet things like this happen in your backyard and it goes almost unnoticed. And it does have an effect and an impact on affordability. And then they're also crying in their other hand, that we don't have enough money. Those were all subject to sales tax. Every single one of those rents, all of them were using city water and city sewer. All of them were contributing towards property taxes and an increased property tax and personal property tax on the mobile home. And I get outraged when I think about that. We allowed that, in addition to a motel at the top of the Baycrest, to be shut down by the then sitting city council, because they, again, didn't like the look of it, but also, the guy died and then it didn't operate for a year. I'm
Right.
outraged, Michael. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, I'm only here to help and raise your blood pressure. That's what it's all about. Do you feel my
Deep breath.
Do you feel my weight of pain now? Do you feel
Big time?
Oh man,
Yes.
that's what it is.
Say
All right.
please.
Chris Story. We're about to jump into it. Here we go. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all this stuff. Here we go. Let's get to it. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Chris Story is our guest for this final segment on this beautiful Tuesday. Coming up tomorrow on the program, Ben Carpenter will be joining us in hour 1 to talk about the fiscal situation in the state. And I'm hoping to hear from, maybe Mike Shower will be in hour 2 tomorrow. If you're down on the peninsula today and you feel like taking a drive on this sunny day, or if you're in the home area, come down and join me from 11 to 2 today. I will be at Ketchimack Auto Parts for their big annual tent sale. Going to be enjoying whatever weather I can get out there, whether it's rain or shine. We'll be out there from 11 to 2 today, and we'll be broadcasting live on all the radio stations as well. So please come down and check it out today from 11 to 2 p.m., 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. here this morning in right there on the bypass in Homer, Main Street and the bypass, in fact, is where they're at. Ketchimack Auto Parts, starting at 11. Chris Story, the man from Homer, comes in to soothe our souls. Today, he's going to talk about the weight of pain. I can't wait to hear what this is all about. Give it to me, Chris.
My mentor, who I never got to meet, but I've read all of his books and listened to many hours of his speeches, Jim Rohn, said, we must all suffer from one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference, he said, is the pain of discipline weighs ounces while the regret weighs tons. And I love that concept that, look, we're going to have some suffering no matter what. You can suffer now with ounces, or the burden of that weight of regret will weigh tons and weigh you down. And anything you've ever wanted to accomplish in life, you know that it feels heavy in the moment. That discipline that it takes to accomplish a goal feels absolutely so burdensome you can't move another step. And then you get on the other side of it and you remember it as almost having been a weightless effort, and you're so grateful to have accomplished it, or become whatever it is, or graduating, whatever it is you're trying to do or have in your life. You know, the weight of having completed something when you're on the far side of it is almost weightless compared to regret of the shoulda, woulda, coulda club, or I wanted to 6 years ago, I thought about doing that. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's too late, or even later in life. So that's the whole point of it. I love that concept that the weight of discipline is ounces, the weight of regret is tons.
Yeah, I mean, we've all, you can all look back and go, boy, I wish I would have. And that's the weight you're carrying there, instead of if you just knuckled down and done it, then, it's painful in a little bit. It's, it's like working out, right? Which, I mean, is ironic since I don't really work out, but it's the idea of working out and getting a little bit of pain, but, experiencing the gains and the satisfaction on the other side of being healthier and happier.
You know what else is difficult? Speaking truth to power, which is what you do every single day, 5 days a week. That is difficult, and that can be painful. You're running the risk of upsetting people, and that can be painful. There's a lot of people that just want to go through life placating, avoiding, dodging, dip, dodge, duck, dive, and then they still get hit in the face with a dodgeball later and live with the regret of not having spoken up sooner. So it isn't just about accomplishment. It's a way of life. When you are willing to take the burden today of discipline and the idea that somebody might not like what you say, there's always going to be somebody that's a little jealous of you and or your ability to accomplish something, or again, speaking truth to power, that you do it anyway. And once you've accomplished something or you've gone so far in life, you can look back and go, man, I'm really glad that I did the thing. I disciplined myself. And discipline doesn't have to be, I don't know, maybe that's not even a word that could be used in this conversation because it connotates so much negativity in many people's lives, from getting your knuckles wrapped to go get your own switch, which millennials will switch. What? Yeah, getting spanked, which is a whole nother word they don't know. But nevertheless, the regret of not having done something weighs on you, and I know it firsthand. I remember I was just recently looking at my my publishing account with KDP, the Kindle Publishing Direct, and I look back and I saw in 2015 was the first entry I had made with a terrible manuscript, a terrible book that I'd started on I did it start to finish on my own without any help whatsoever, not even an editor involved or a layout. It was awful. And then the next entry wasn't until 2019. So 2015, I was on a roll. I had momentum, and I quit between 2015 and 2019. So 4 years of delay, just simply for not having the discipline to do what I needed to do. By 2019, I'd put a team together and launched, and haven't stopped since. And so I don't regret that for a second. But those 4 years, that span of wanting to and not being willing to, that weighs on me.
Yeah, and that is the weight of pain. Is always, again, the hindsight of I wish I should, I could have, but I didn't. And that's why, you take a look at something, look at it, does it align with my goals? And yeah, it's going to be painful, but everything I can do to push the needle forward.
As Americans right now, we're living with $1.2 trillion in credit card debt, with an average, at least as of yesterday, and I looked this up, an average of 22% interest rate. Average. Some are lower, some are higher, but that's a huge average. That's a heavy, heavy burden, and it's painful, and many cannot see the light of day. And this, by the way, comes after 35 years of Dave Ramsey teaching and preaching financial peace across the country, coast to coast, and yet still we've racked up $1.2 trillion in this revolving kind of credit card debt that for many never gets paid off on a monthly or yearly basis. And that's a huge weight of regret. But you can stop right now, stop regretting, and start taking action, and just discipline, get rid of it, cut up the cards, don't use it unless you really do something incredibly disciplined and pay it off at the end of every month. But that weight alone is ruining some people.
Yeah, again, that's the pain of immediate gratification, right? That's the pain of I want it now versus disciplining myself to pay money to myself for a short period of time to be able to buy it cash. That's the same kind of pain and the same concept, only in a financial situation. It's the pain of delayed gratification versus immediacy.
Yeah, pay the price of pain of discipline today, and shed the weight of regret from all your tomorrows. I mean, that's the reality. If you're willing to just, as you said, delay some gratification, we've got this lavender blackberry cake with this incredible frosting sitting out in the kitchen right now. And I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about it, but I better delay that at least until after lunch.
Well, cake for breakfast is amazing. So I will just say that. I mean, feel free to do it, but at least delay it till after the show. That's all I'm saying, which we've only got about a minute of. So let me give you the floor here to summate and give us your final thoughts, Chris.
I think if this is a new concept, this is the perfect time to hear it. We're about halfway through, almost at the halfway mark of 2025. So this is an incredible time to evaluate where you are, where you want to go, and what obstacles are between you and who you want to become. And if you look closely, you'll probably see the largest obstacle staring back at you in the mirror. But that's also your best friend and will help you get to where you want to go.
So pay the toll now or pay the toll later, essentially. You're going to feel the weight, but should it be ounces or should it be pounds or tons? Chris Story, The Weight of Pain. Thank you, my friend. It's been great to talk with you, as always. Thank you for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, we are out of time for today. Tomorrow is going to be Ben Carpenter, maybe Mike Shower. We'll see who we can scrounge up for hour 2. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you at 11 at Ketchamack Auto Parts. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of the show for today. And I feel pretty good. It's I didn't get quite so ranty. Feel pretty proud of that today. And of course, Harold had to come in at the end and just be like, not even read the room. Anyway, it's all good. Thank you for coming on board. Folks, we will see you tomorrow. Again, be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you then.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.